All right, it is the B Block Podcast. We are live here, and we're coming off of two horrendous Rockets losses and a horrendous start to the show, but two horrendous losses from the Houston Rockets. First to the Boston Celtics 2 nights ago, then to the Charlotte Hornets last night. And if you heard Ime Udoka talk after the game, and if you watched the game, it pretty much sums it up to say it was pretty much the same. It was the same effort, the same piss poor effort, the same poor shooting, the same lack of cohesion and flow on the offensive end of the floor. I mean, it is just bad. It's just bad. And so I don't really want to dig too much into the games. You saw the games, I imagine. The thing that I really wanted to bring y'all here to talk about on this particular episode is the Rockets core and like how much there's an essential question here, I feel like, and it's how much do you believe in the Rockets' young core? A lot of the conversation over the last several weeks about how aggressive to be at the trade deadline, how aggressive to be over the summer. And I've talked about this. I talked about this yesterday in the live about this kind of these two factions of Rockets fans now that want to stay patient and run it back, add Fred VanVleet and Steven Adams, and everything's a go, versus this faction of Rockets fans that are like, let's blow this thing up and take a big swing. Let's swing for the fences. Let's go get a bona fide frontline superstar to pair with Kevin Durant, as opposed to just banking on these young guys or one of these young guys emerging as that at some point, or this idea that Alperen Sengun is already that at this point. So I brought y'all here to talk about the young core because I think it's really worth kind of dissecting and looking at, right? How good is the Rockets' young core really? And since the trade for Kevin Durant, that sends out Jalen Green. You had six, right? You had like the core six is what we used to call them last year. Now it's just a core five. And I think that Rockets fans and Rockets brass, if they're being honest with themselves, are doing some introspection right now on what is the ceiling of these players individually and what is the ceiling of this collection of players in terms of this runway that everybody likes to talk about. And I think they've got a decent runway to be a competitive basketball team, to be a sort of an up and coming and eventually an established perennial playoff team. Like I think the young core is good enough to keep the Rockets competitive for a long time, or for however long it is that the Rockets want to keep all of these guys around. But how good is the Rockets young core really? That's the question that I'm asking. That's the question that I want y'all to ask yourselves. And I want that to be the question that we discuss amongst ourselves, right? And so let's start with, let's go in chronological order but backwards, right? The ones that were drafted most recently to the longest tenured young core member. All right. So we're gonna start with Reed Shepard, shooting 23% from three in the last 8 games and 32% from the field. It's been touch and go, and as of late, it's been really bad. It almost feels like this natural shooter has forgotten how to shoot all of a sudden. And I don't think that that's the case. I think he's just going through a rough stretch. And I like the fact that he took 17 shots last night. I like the fact that he continues to be aggressive. I like the fact that the Rockets didn't apparently want to trade for somebody that might cut into his minutes, especially if that was just going to be a marginal improvement and was going to cost them more than what it was worth. I like the investment in Reed Shepard. Anybody that has listened to this podcast or listened to me talk on the radio knows that I am one of the bigger Reed Shepard fans out there. But how good is Reed Shepard really? Okay, and now we've had an opportunity over these last couple of games, or over the last week, let's call it. You've had an opportunity to compare what does it look like when a team has a rookie stud franchise cornerstone, like say Cooper Flagg, who I know was the number 1 overall pick and somebody that we have been talking about for a long time as being one of these guys. Reed Sheppard wasn't that. But you saw what it looked like when Cooper Flagg was at Toyota Center on Saturday. You saw what it looked last night with Con Knipple, right, who was not a number 1 overall pick, but another one and done, who it looks like that team has something there. It looks like it. I mean, think about it. In less than a week, we've seen what it looks like to have a young franchise cornerstone. The Mavericks have it with Cooper Flagg. The Hornets have it in Con Knipple and Brandon Miller. The Celtics wiped the floor with the Rockets, just relying on Derek White, Peyton Pritchard, and solid team basketball, which I think speaks more to coaching than anything. But if we start with Reed Sheppard, do you feel like that's a player? Okay, as much as I like him, and as much as I've been advocating for him, do you feel like that's a player that you for sure just got to invest in? That you for sure, like I get not giving up on him, but is that a can't miss? This is going to be an undeniable star. I think he's got star potential. Is it can't miss, undeniable star? Hard to say that off of what you've seen recently. And when you compare it to what else is around and again, what that's supposed to look like. Let's keep going. Amen Thompson, now in his 3rd season, number 4 overall pick from a few years ago now. All NBA player, or all NBA defensive player, I should say. Got the all NBA defensive potential written all over him. Not just potential, but he's done it. And I should say perennial all NBA defensive potential. Like could be that for the rest of his career. Has a lot of room to grow offensively, but you see what it looks like when he gets downhill. You see what it looks like when he's off ball playing in the dunker spot, or the few times when he's a screener and when he rolls. Like you see what could be the matchup, the mismatch advantages for the Rockets in this case with Amen Thompson on the floor. But is that somebody you can run an offense through? A guard or a wing who can't really shoot, doesn't have a 3-point shot at all, and is like okay in the mid-range, but not great. Gets to the basket pretty good in the paint, but like can that be your archetype? I think he's fantastic. I'm glad to have him on the team. I think he's a for sure piece. I think every team probably wants a player, something like one of these Thompson twins, and the men specifically. But how good is he really? This time a year ago, we were starting to talk about, like, could this be the best player on the team? Is this the player that you're building around? How do you feel about that roughly a year later? Can't say that I feel great about building a team around Amen Thompson, as incredible as he is. Let's keep going down the list. Tari Eason. Tari Eason has probably exceeded any expectation, any reasonable expectation that a Rockets fan could have had for him when he was drafted out of LSU several years back. But Tari Eason is somebody that you can't necessarily rely on to play back-to-backs. He's somebody that's had some injury issues, and he's also just very clearly a specific type of role player. You're not running plays for him. You're certainly not building your team around him. He's just another one of those guys that you definitely would want to have, type of guy that you want to have on the team. And that's not a knock on him, but it is worth posing the question of how good is Tari Eason really? He deserves credit for what he's doing from the 3-point line this year. One of the better 3-point shooters in the league, killing it from the corners, worked on his shot. It seems like every year, this is a credit to him, it seems like every year Tari Eason adds something to his game or improves some element of his game. And yet, like these other guys, all of these guys that we're going to talk about, also a flawed player. It's okay. But the question there is, how good is he really? Let's keep going. Jabari Smith Jr., drafted in that same class. Number 3 overall pick. I think we've decided now. I think at this point, we've all given up on the idea of Jabari Smith being like a centerpiece or a frontline star type of player. But he's a starter. He's a really good player. I feel like he's been a bright spot in back-to-back games where the Rockets have just not shown up at all at home against Eastern Conference opponents, no less, where they have not shown up at all against the Celtics and the Hornets in back-to-back games. Jabari Smith Jr., to me, was the bright spot, at least in the first half against the Celtics until everything went to shit, and had some moments, too, in this game where he was the bright spot against the Hornets. But he's not a non-negotiable. He's not a hands-off, can't trade. In fact, with all the talk about the poison pill deal, like how his 12 million really is 22 million for anybody that would have traded for him at the deadline, and how it's, obviously the contract changes and the extension kicks in after this year, like that's absolutely the type of contract that you would, or in the type of contract you would use, and the type of player that you would be willing to give up to up the ante. Because when you ask that question of how good is he really, you're only going to get but so far. And then that brings us to the best of these 5, and the one player who I think most of us do believe is in that franchise player conversation. And if you're going to go out and get somebody who you think is better, this guy is going to have to be in the deal, and that's Alperen Sengun. Okay, Alperen Sengun. And here, this is really where we're left, is how good is Alperen Sengun really? When we talk about this runway, when we talk about not giving up a young superstar for an aging superstar, it all to me comes back to this question about how good is this particular guy really? Can he be the best player on the championship team? Is a team that has the depth of the Indiana Pacers or the Oklahoma City Thunder of last year, or of the Celtics of a couple of years ago? Can a team with that kind of depth, with this guy at the top end, be the best? That's a question that I think is something that we all got to be really asking ourselves, and telling the truth about it. Not just falling in love with a player, or falling in love with a process, or falling in love with the fact that they've improved in the way that they have, or that this developmental period has worked out in the way that it has, and you are one of the better teams in the Western Conference because of it. Where can you go from here is the question. I'm pause that for a second and play this Ime Udoka sound, because you can really hear the frustration. And I think this is the frustration from a lot of people, but there's also frustration with the coach as well, in terms of accountability, in terms of what are the adjustments that you are making, what is the impact that you are having on these performances, which I think is all fair. But this was Udoka when he's asked about the energy and the effort and the overall performance that he's gotten from this team over the last couple of nights.
Pre-game, you said you wanted to see better energy, better juice, and better effort tonight. How would you assess the team's performance?
No different.
What frustrated you the most about tonight?
That you see what happened yesterday, and it's a repeat of that. Teams basically looking like they're coming in and playing harder, and they're looking at that mentality that if we play harder than them, we'll beat them. There's no fight, no aggression, no just blank stares. And in the past, if we didn't win or weren't going to win, at least we would get into it, do something about it. And right now, it's the same mistakes over and over and over. Things we talk about and show at halftime get worse in the third quarter, and it doesn't look like there's any resistance.
with the current roster, is there anyone you're looking to provide that kind of emotional spark and the energy outside of yourself?
The guys that are here that have done it for the last few years. Like, it's not one guy, it's the group in general. And so you have the players that started the year doing it, and until recently at least had that. And so, no, it's not like one guy's going to do it. It's collective. You know, I played, and so I know that you have to bring some juice and energy on the court yourself, and then I got to get them motivated to play, not just against the big teams. And so, but regardless of that, no, it's not one person.
When we talk about the collective, man, this is an issue that I'm having with this team of how overly reliant. Okay, and this speaks to this young core, this core five that I'm talking about. How it feels like they're just overly reliant on the old guys. Kevin Durant playing more minutes than almost anybody, playing the most minutes on the team. He and Şengün, I should look that up, but he's playing next to more minutes than anybody and way more minutes than it seems like somebody at his age with this much what we thought was support around him, way more than he should be having to play. Overly relying on Kevin Durant. Fred VanVleet's injury. Can't minimize it. Like, just aside from the fact that these guys are young, even if they were veterans, Fred VanVleet's role, just the makeup of the team, the way it's constructed, his role is essential. But then at the same time, you got these young guys and Reed Shepherd and Amen Thompson, who we talked about, who you were hoping could together between the two of them, along with Alperen Şengün, the Shin hub, if you will, offense, that somehow you could compensate for this. Between the three of them, you really still don't have that. And to be fair, you had a lot of these issues even with Fred VanVleet, which is something that has been pointed out by a lot of people, is that, look, the offense looking wonky was a problem when Fred was healthy and Jalen Green was on the team. You substitute Green for Kevin Durant, and now there's no Fred VanVleet out there. But who's to say for sure that you still wouldn't have spells like this? You talk about the collective, the group. The group just has not been good enough to, at least right now, it actually has been. They still got one of the better records, right? Despite having lost these last couple of games. But from watching them right now, it does not look like it's good enough to survive not running Kevin Durant in the ground, or not having Fred VanVleet out there, or not having Steven Adams out there to create all of these extra shots for you because you can't shoot. It's just it's a really rough look. And then back to this Şengün point, right? Because that's where I'd arrived. I'd gone through the other players that arrived at Alperen Şengün. And this is an excellent basketball player, man. An excellent basketball player. But we do have to wonder about the ceiling, I think. Just I think based off of the style of play, based off of the inconsistency in production on both ends of the floor. Okay. Like, some nights it looks all NBA level, other nights it just looks okay. It looks fine. Is this frontline championship basketball? So I want to play this sound from Ime Udoka when he was asked. This is an exchange he had with Big Sarge, friend of the show, and then also Will Guillory of The Athletic, when they're asking him. Sarge asked him about being hunted on the pick and roll and the defensive struggles. Will then ask Udoka about the struggles offensively. I want to play all of this. I hope y'all hear it, man. I've been having trouble with the doggone screen share. I downloaded that other video, but let's see what we got. All right, so since that's working that way, we're gonna grab this screen grab and rock it like that. Okay, so let's try that again. Emi Udoka asked by Sarge about the being hunted on the pick and roll, and then Will Guillory asking him about Shingun shooting as of late.
Have you noticed in the last two games, it looks like teams are starting to try to hunt Alpi on defense and put him in those pick and roll situations?
It's been the case since I've been here. So no different there.
And one more, Alpi. Over the last 6 games, I think he's under 40% from the field. What do you kind of seeing with the shots he's getting and why they just aren't falling the way he's used to?
Decent shots. I mean, shots he's made since I've been here, and getting good looks there. So that's not the problem. I think at times young players allow offense to dictate their game in general, and to your point, give some away on defense when you're not as engaged because you're not scoring. And so it's not just an Alpern thing. I think a lot of guys were going through shooting problems, and you let it affect your all-around game. And so the shots he's getting are decent. I think he's going to see some doubles as always, but he's getting really good looks deep in the paint, and he's been up and down as far as that. But want the aggression to be there. What you saw in Indiana, we need to see that, and regardless of the result. And so he'll make his way out of it. But like I said, there's other ways to impact the game with scoring, and I don't want him to equate a great game with just scoring only.
So to me, if you're going to be like a throwback European back to the basket post up / ISO type of player, mostly below the rim, doesn't shoot threes, doesn't really have a great jumper, like you got to be automatic around the rim. You got to be automatic in the paint. You got to be damn near dominant at that for it to be the archetype, for that to be what I'm looking at. And it's just not that. It is not that. It's very, very good. Is it great? Is it consistently great? And is it very, very good enough or consistently great enough for you to pass on the opportunity to maximize with Kevin Durant? Now, I know we also got, when I talk about these factions of Rockets fans, I also hear from a lot of people that think the Kevin Durant trade was a mistake, that kind of increasing this sense of urgency by having such an older player in such a smaller window means that you don't actually have as much runway with these younger players as you would like to have. You can't really allow them to grow and blossom the way that you really want them to, because there is this urgency for them to be ready, and for whoever's out there on the court to be ready to help Kevin Durant finish out his career on top and help the Rockets maximize the Kevin Durant window in years. And then this idea also that Kevin Durant, as a mid-range merchant, somehow simplifies your offense and makes things easier on the defense, on the opposing defense, because they don't have to necessarily account for the same athleticism and pressure on the basket that Jalen Green puts on you. I don't really have a lot for that. I got a tough time having any issues with Kevin Durant being on this basketball team, based off of how he's playing, based off of what he gives you, based off of how his existence pretty much bails you out from being some like middling team. Like the only reason why people talk about the Rockets among the contenders, among the best teams in the Western Conference at this point, is because of Kevin Durant. Last year, they're the 2 seed. Nobody believed in them. And then they go to the playoffs, and what happens? They lose in the first round because they didn't have a guy like that. Now they do. The question is everything around them, the depth that they had last year, or the ancillary pieces that worked for them last year, the Dylan Brooks and the Fred VanVleets and Steven Adams of the world, none of those guys are here now. And then it brings you back to the original question: how good is the young core really? I think it's good. Is it so good that your pot committed to it? The Midnight Ace points out that this is not the one I wanted from the Midnight Ace. Yeah, the people swear Alpi is Jokic, and it's not as close as people think, which I think is okay that he's not really Jokic. You know, it's not like he's got to be Jokic. We do the comparison game way, way, way too much, and it's easy to do. And with this one, I get it. The similarities in their game. But you're right. It's not as close as people think. And more so than just the comparison, if you just isolate it to Alperen Sengun, the question comes back to how good is this? No, you don't have the shooting with Sengun that you have with Jokic. Sengun is not quite as big as Jokic. And it's not, again, it's not just about him not being Jokic, but it is how good is it? Emmanuel points out, Jokic can shoot. Sengun has no shot outside of 16 feet. What's the ceiling on that? Midnight Ace says it's a good young core, but definitely not great. We don't have a Cade or a SGA. You don't have a Cooper Flag. You don't have a Con Knipple. So these are relevant thoughts, relevant questions to me in terms of how we talk about the team, how we evaluate them for the rest of the season. What do you want and what should be, forget what you want for a second, what legitimately should be the Rockets' approach to this offseason? I think it's good news that Giannis didn't get traded. And y'all don't have to love, I know a lot of people don't really love Giannis. I feel like y'all are people that are not really watching basketball. Y'all are people that don't realize that how dominant Giannis still is to this day. I know he's injured right now, but you ain't even got to love Giannis per se. But you need to start thinking up ideas of like how you're going to get this team or how this team is going to get itself from good to great. How do they not just be the Portland Trailblazers of the early 2000s? I don't know why I took a shot at them, but that's just what I thought of. A team that was really good, had some good young players. Now, I know they had a lot of other issues. That's probably not a great comparison at all because I don't think this team has those issues. But just good, not great. Senior Buble, shout out to you, says Alpi's game is legit. I think it's just legit enough to offer a team that's ready to offload a superstar and give them a future that they can start thinking about. Because we're past that. We're past the future now. We're in the now portion. Future talk was in 2021, 2022, 2023, maybe even last year. Before this trade, which a lot of people, or I'm not going to say a lot of people, but I'm seeing some people did not like the Kevin Durant trade because it shortened that window or it increased the urgency. But you're past that now. So I think that Alperen Sengun and whatever else it would take for the Rockets to give up gives the Bucks a future to think about. And then it gives the Rockets a present to think about. Emmanuel says a men's shot is broken. Bad mechanics, very low chance. He fixes it just to be average. Look, a man out of all of these guys is the one guy who I'm probably least disappointed in at this point. You could say that maybe about Sengun too, since he's playing at a borderline all-star level. But Amin is the guy that I'm least disappointed in. And then this is the most disappointing thing about his game is that there has been no improvement on that jump shot. Zero. For all the improvement that we talk about with Tari and the 3-point line, you have not seen that at all with him in. And he needs that extra dimension to the game to be more than just all NBA defense and a guy who can get downhill and cause some hell in transition here and there. There is not enough of an offensive game or offensive bag to say, hey, we're just going to give this guy the ball. Remember last year when they were giving him the ball at the end of games, seeing what that looked like? Then they stopped doing it after a while. It worked a time or two. Then they stopped doing it. And they certainly don't do it now with Kevin Durant on the team. But how would you even, if Kevin Durant for some reason didn't play in a game and the ball was in Amen Thompson's hands at the end of a game, how would you feel about it? I think this is a good point from Romy, that you can't just keep adding superstars and expect to win. Others need to step up. I can't argue with that. You got me there, because I did think that adding Kevin Durant to this team would just vault them to contention. Then Fred VanVleet got hurt. I do think that there's something to be said for the people that are like, hey, be patient. What would it have looked like if the others you were expecting to step up were actually available to you and they could? There's something about being in the moment and watching these disappointing performances that really magnify the growth that still has to come from the young players. But what Romy is saying is true. You added a superstar. Şengün, in theory, was supposed to be taking a superstar leap. And if you do have Fred VanVleet and Steven Adams, you know, you're and Dorian Finney-Smith signing looks like a complete dud, because my man just can't really move like that. But if was a fifth, if was a fifth, we'd all be drunk. But if that stuff did happen, or what I should say is, to Romy's point, you would need those things to happen for them to actually be able to win. But absent of those guys, the others to step up, okay? Your superstar right now is Kevin Durant. We're trying to figure out right now if Alperen Şengün is a superstar, just kind of a borderline all-star. Right now, he's in the list of the others right now. And to my original question, the young core, these others, Romy's point, how much do you trust them to step up? They got rid of young Cam Whitmore. Romy says they got rid of young Cam Whitmore and brought in old Finney-Smith. Now, to be fair, okay, certainly doesn't look great today, and that's a funny comment now. To be fair, Cam Whitmore, you couldn't get to play within the structure of the team to save his damn life. And Dorian Finney-Smith was not supposed to look like this. This was a bad calculation. I think getting rid of Cam Whitmore was its own thing and just fine. I think the Dorian Finney-Smith deal we're seeing now in retrospect is one we would like to have back. The Midnight Ace says that we have third options and role players, unfortunately. Is that not what it feels like? It feels like Şengün is a second option on a championship team, on a team that's developing, on a team that's on the rise, on the come up, on a team that's turning things around. Maybe he's a first option on that team. On a championship team, on a team that's been to the playoffs already and is looking to do more than just go, seems like he's a second option at best. Everybody else feels like a third option at best. But I feel that. I like this from Midnight Ace too. We have to stop with comparisons like coked out. Hold on, wait a minute. Midnight Ace. Midnight Ace. You butchered the nickname. You butchered the nickname, man. It's cocaine curry for Reed Shepherd, man. Not coked out curry. Coked out curry be like, no wonder this shit is not working. We're not calling them coked out curry. We calling them cocaine curry. You know, because he white. Not coked out. Coked out would be an actual insult and slanderous or whichever is the right one. I don't think I don't think the kid is he seems like a good kid. I knew what you meant, man. Hey, Midnight, I knew what you meant, but you called him coked out. Hey, words matter, bro. That is a distinction with a difference. All right, look, Senior Buble. I I want Senior Buble to be a part of every live where I come across as pessimistic or negative or rude or like a hater. Which I feel like y'all, if y'all don't know me well enough, the ones who do should know me well enough to know that I'm not. I try to just be a truth teller. I love Houston. I love our teams. I'm always gonna be like oriented to want them to do well. You know, like that's the core of me. I want the teams to do well. But I gotta call a spade a spade. I gotta keep it a buck and be real when I see the shit. So your Buble says, hey man, say man, we 3 games out of second in the West with all the moving parts we are talking about. All this tragic talk, I don't get it. I'm just asking you a question. How good is it really? You watched these last couple of games, Senor Buble. You watched them against Dallas on Saturday. You're looking around the league. You see what the young cores look like. OKC led by SGA, Jalen Williams, and Chet. You see the vision there. What you got Cade Cunningham doing out there in Detroit? Okay. Just saw last night with Con Knipple and Brandon Miller what that looked like. I mentioned Cooper Flagg on Saturday. I'm not trying to be doom and gloom. I'm not saying that they missed the playoffs. I'm not saying that they don't make things interesting against any of these teams in the playoffs. I'm looking ahead a little bit here because I do feel like when you talk about tragic talk, you tell me, Senor Buble, you think this team winning the championship this year? Let's be honest. They win a playoff series, I'll celebrate. They go to the conference finals, we can do a parade. I can do a small parade. My neighborhood out here in Mo City. But it's not to be doom and gloom. It's just to be realistic, man. I'm not trying to bring the vibes down and bring the mood down. I'm trying to think about a way to take this Rockets team or the proper way to frame this Rockets team. Because we was talking about championship contender to start the year. Then Fred VanVleet got hurt and it was like, ooh, who's the point guard? How they gonna get into their sets? Who's just gonna handle the ball for this squad? And it's just not there. It looks like the meeting room is making it to the court. I see a lot of finger pointing. I noticed this yesterday too, or last night. There was, and I don't think it's like no friction or nothing like that, but you could see like Amin and Jabari not on the same page about wherever they were supposed to be defensively. That was, and I didn't go to the game. This was just on the TV, like going in between, action into a timeout. It does feel that way. It feels like not just finger pointing, but like nobody's got answers. You telling me Fred VanVleet's the only person on this team that has a clue? He's that important? You need him on the court that bad? He's the only one on the team that's got a clue? Coaches don't have answers. Players don't have answers. It's a rough look, man. So that's what I wanted to talk about was the the young core, and you might call it a lack of belief. I'll call it skepticism that this is all you need to win a championship. That just stick with this core, and it's going to develop into championship caliber. Got my doubts, folks. I got some serious doubts. Y'all let me know in the comment section if you catch this on the replay. Make sure you subscribe to the B Block Podcast on YouTube. Check us out there. You can also catch us on the audio only versions as well. So that is also an option. Tell people about the podcast, man. We're gonna do a lot more, trying to be more active and more consistent. I appreciate everybody that's come through and shown some support. Come in and added your thoughts, man. I'm curious what y'all think about how good is the young core really? Questions that need answering. All right. Y'all let me know.